Well, shit. Cool. Um. Oh. Well, shit. Kinds of wrong buttons trying to get the right screen on the board. But tonight we're finally talking some real NFL game football. It's here. We've waited. We've been working so hard, and now we finally get to reap the benefits. I am so excited. My Bears open up tomorrow night. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about some news and notes, and we are going to talk about some last chance to buy, sell. Where's that sound coming from?
I'm not hearing anything.
I mute myself, so I don't know.
I have no idea. I feel like I'm going nuts.
You are freaking out, man.
Is it coming from me? I'm not hearing anything.
Who's got the video up
Yeah,
without it muted?
Not me. I don't even have it up on this computer. Are you sure it isn't you?
Dude, I have no idea where it's at.
Did it go away?
We are definitely going to have to start this over.
Mine are both showing muted. I have the YouTube and the Facebook pulled up, but they're both muted.
Apparently it was me.
Sweet.
It said it was muted. All right, we're going to start this over. That was not what we intended to do. But that's the fun part of it. We got some blooper reel material here. Anybody over on YouTube laughing at us? All right, let's try this again. That was really hard. Audience does not hear anything. Well, that's definitely not good. Audience does not hear anything.
They're probably talking about they don't hear what you're hearing.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I didn't think that you did. That's why I felt like I was going nuts. with Mr. Brad Menendez and Mr. Bridger St. Clair. How are you guys doing today? Brad, how was your day?
Good, man. Good. Busy, but all for good reasons. I'm ready for some football. How are you, Bridger?
I'm doing well.
That was very, very exciting. It was titillating. I could feel the excitement through the
Palpable.
phone.
That's about as
Um,
excited as I get.
okay,
I'm
and
excited. I promise
we're,
I'm excited.
we're gonna call you Bill Belichick, is what we're gonna
He's
do.
just ready for Cincinnati.
Right, that dude does not show any excitement whatsoever. We were joking about it earlier today in a group chat, just about how, like, what would you do if Bill Belichick was like, "Hey, you want to come to my really fun party?" Like,
Probably have the same response you had.
I'm throwing a really fun party. Like, I feel like that's
It sounds like a good time to me.
I'm yes, I'm so excited. um, on this episode, we are going to talk some news. We got a lot of news with cuts that happened last week, and a certain running back finally reported to practice today after signing a small contract. We've got the Bears and Packers tomorrow night opening up the 2019 season, and we're going to talk some last chance buys and sells here before the season starts and before their value goes one way or the other. Um, we are going to get into that. Brad, what's some news that we gotta go over here?
Well, we got a few things that have happened this week. Jared Goff has signed an extension, so he signed. They added a few extra years for to be in LA until the 2024 season. Most folks have heard today that the Eagles offered Jordan Howard and some sort of mid-round pick swap for Melvin Gordon, which obviously LA turned down because they want a first plus for Melvin Gordon. At least that's the rumors. The Falcons created some room financially so that they could get a Julio deal done, because that's been the conversation all summer. You know, the promise was to get Julio done before the season started, and they're running out of time. What else do we got? I think those are kind of the big stories that I'm aware of at this point, other than obviously, Zeke signing his massive extension. But I'm coming to find out when you look at the contract details that it's really only a 4-year, $50 million deal. The 2 years after that are kind of deal. Dallas could cut ties without much cap hit from what I'm seeing. So those are kind of the big news and notes at the moment that I've come across. Anything else that you guys want to add, Bridger?
No, I mean, that's everything I've heard. I haven't talked to you guys since Jadeveon Clowney and the Texans made a couple of questionable moves. So that's the other thing. If we wanted to touch on that, I don't know how much you guys did touch on that, but I think you got it taken care of.
Yeah, well, first off, you went through that pretty quick, so we didn't really get to put any input in. Um, I think the first thing you talked about was Jared
Mm-hmm.
Goff, and I think that it's not unexpected that they did it. That's a shit ton of money, and I always wonder, like, it seems like the Rams are always giving out these huge contracts, and I don't know how the hell they even have cap space to keep signing guys like this. Um, I don't follow the cap very heavy, but uh,
Well,
Bridger, did that surprise you? The timing more so than
not necessarily. I mean, I think we all expected him to get extended at some point. I wasn't expecting a certain time for it. I mean, I'm surprised that they went and gave him quite a bit more than what Russell Wilson just recently signed for. I think the annual average came out to $33.5 million on the extension, which is a lot. And like you were saying, the Rams are handing out a lot of big contracts. A big reason why they were able to do that was having Goff on a rookie deal. So we'll see how they can build their team now in the future with a quarterback under big money who I don't think any of us really believe is all that special. No, it's not surprising. It's a lot of money. I was expecting him to get more in the 30 range than the 34 range.
Yeah, I like Goff. I think Goff is fine. I think there's still a lot of overreaction after that rookie year. Everybody thinks it was just Sean McVay, um, but that's the road we're going down. And Brad, I'm wondering, like, what's your thought? This has to, like, Cowboys fans have to cringe seeing that, knowing that Dak is one of the next two guys up in line to get a contract in uh, Dallas. What are your thoughts on how that affects Dak?
The thing I don't understand with NFL teams is the next contract always seems to have to trump the one previous. Jared Goff was in the Super Bowl last year. He flamed out in a playoff like Dak Prescott seems to like to do. Like Jared Goff got them to the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously it wasn't all him. Dak doesn't deserve that type of money because he's not proven that he can get the Cowboys to the big game. So obviously we know that the next contract's supposed to be bigger and better, but I don't think he's worth the same kind of money as Jared Goff because Goff's proven what he can do. And Dak, I mean, for all intents and purposes, hasn't made it as far. So what do you think about that?
I don't see. We might as well just segue right into Ezekiel Elliott getting his contract. You touched on it a little bit. I think most of us thought that the deal was going to get done. Like Dallas needed Zeke Elliott for this run that they're on. Um, but I don't know if after giving him that deal and after seeing Goff's deal, if they are going to be able to keep both Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott. I think they're going to have to choose one and lose the other. Uh, Bridger, what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah. Move them, make room for certain guys. But one of Dak, Amari, or Byron Jones almost has to be left out at this point. I don't know who it'll be. I don't know who they should let go. Byron Jones should be the priority among the three. But it'll be interesting to see as to what Brad was saying about Dak doesn't deserve what Goff got. I didn't think Goff deserved what Russell Wilson got. So I don't know how all that plays out. It wouldn't surprise me if Dak signed for 5 year. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't sign at all. I have no idea how that's going to work out with the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a messy situation for those guys in Dallas. And if I was a Dallas fan, I would be biting my nails right now. And I'm sure in a couple of years, I'm going to be doing the same thing in Chicago. We're just at the beginning of that and not quite where they're at this point. Um, my computer is not liking all this new jazz we got going on. It's telling me that we've got an encoding overload. Is our chat still there? How's our chat doing? Good.
Chat hasn't moved, and it looks like the stream is pretty jumpy.
Let me go ahead and just cut some of these scenes out. If we can. Here. Hopefully that helps a little bit. It's telling me it likes it better here, so we'll see how that goes. We are getting asked on YouTube by Cards Are Us what you guys think the Tampa Bay Bucks will do this season. Bridger, why don't you go ahead and hit us with your Tampa Bay Bucks? I know you were them in franchise mode last year. Do you think they'll do as well as you did?
I did pretty good. I was the best of all the Bucks teams, so felt pretty good about that. But I like the Bucks for fantasy purposes a lot this year. I don't think they're going to be a good football team at all. I think they're going to be one of the bottom 5 teams probably. But I do love all of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and O.J. Howard. I think going to be individually productive, really consolidated passing game, and I think it's going to consist of those 3 and not much else. And so for the same reason, I really like Jameis Winston, and I like them all week 1, especially against San Fran. That should be a shootout. So I feel really good about the Bucks players that I have on my fantasy teams. Not so good about the Bucks in real life.
What about you, Brad?
I tend to never bet against Bruce Arians. He always seems to surprise me when I think that he is not going to succeed. It just kind of works. Looking over this roster, there are some holes across the offensive line. I mean, they have a couple of big guys, a couple of big name offensive linemen, and obviously we know all their skill position players, and they're all very exciting for fantasy purposes. The defense, I think, has a lot of talent on it. In the offseason, they signed Ndamukong Suh. They're switching to a 3-4, which works better for what they have. They have a lot better linebackers than they do anything else. They spent, a top 5 pick on Devin White in the draft, which I think was a smart move for their future. I could make the case that they're a bottom 5 team because they're just, I'm not a big Jameis Winston fan long term. But I could also make the case that, they have some sneaky pieces that, based on the division they're in, and with Carolina, with Cam Newton and his injury history, and and some of that maybe they're kind of a 15 to 20 range team. That's still like a 7-9 record at best. But I'm a little more optimistic than Bridger, but probably more so like him in fantasy than anything else. What about you, Rick? What do you think of Bucks?
Yeah, my biggest problem is it's going to be hard for them to win close games because they don't have a running back that you can just give the ball to and be confident that they're going to run the clock out for you. And then if you're on the other side, you've got a turnover-prone quarterback that I don't trust in to win me games. So that's the tough part. So I think that they have the talent to where they could squeak out a 6-10 or a 7-9 season. I mean, it was just a year ago we saw a worse Dolphins team go 7-9, so weirder stuff has happened. Um, but yeah, I'm not real confident in them. Uh, okay, going back to some of the news that we talked about, the Gordon offer, we saw that the Chargers finally said, yes, we will let you seek out a trade, gave him permission to do that. He started following all kinds of Eagles personality or Philly personalities and the Eagles and that fun stuff. And I know in our team chat we were kind of joking about it and whatnot. But then the report came out that the Eagles offered Jordan Howard and a mid-round pick swap for Gordon, but the Chargers turned that down right away, and they want at least one first-round pick in the trade. Um, Bridger, are we going to see Melvin Gordon get traded? And were you surprised that Philly was actually that interested in him?
We won't see him get traded for a first. I don't see any team giving that up for a running back that has to be paid. Especially considering the college running backs that are going to be coming in the next year. There's just not enough demand for the position. So that is pretty surprising considering they just drafted Miles Sanders in the second round, and I love Miles Sanders, so I'm really glad a deal didn't get done because that would really hurt those shares quite a bit. But yeah, I think Melvin Gordon, he's either going to be I don't know what's going to happen with Melvin Gordon. Uh, I think he's going to be traded. I think the Chargers will end up settling on a second or a third round pick, or with a couple other little details thrown in there. But who knows? I mean, I think they should be really happy if they can get a second round pick out of him.
Yeah, I agree. They're gonna have to come down on that price because nobody's gonna pay that price and pay him. Uh, and then there comes a certain point where it's just not worth having an asset that you're not using and that you're not going to be able to use, or that's going to be disgruntled and cause turmoil in the locker room or whatnot. Brad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, something's got to give. You know, if the Chargers and Gordon have, you know, the communication's broken down to a point where nothing's going to happen, well, then they've got to do something. I mean, they've got to move him. You know, obviously, clearly, we're seeing they're not going to re-sign him. They're definitely not going to give him Zeke type money because he's not worth it. You know, in my mind at this point, because of what we're seeing from the media and from some of these other teams, it almost feels like we've got to see a few weeks and injuries take place before a deal really gets done for Gordon. And I would see like a team that, you know, feels like they have playoff hopes and they lose somebody important in line, you know, running back wise, then I could see a deal getting done. But otherwise, it's hard to see anybody really getting close to LA's crazy idea of what he's worth in their mind. I mean, it seems like they're too far apart. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to have to. Both sides are probably going to have to do a little more to get the deal done. If the Eagles really want Gordon, and we know that the Eagles are in the middle of a win now scenario, they're going to have to come up on the pick. They're probably going to have to get rid of whatever they're asking in return pick wise. And then Chargers are going to have to come down to get a deal done. But if I was a Miles Sanders owner right now, I would kind of be nervous because I just feel like if the Eagles liked him that much, they wouldn't be trying to go out and get Gordon. Because if you go out and get Gordon, you give up draft assets and you give up money, you pay him. They're gonna have to pay him. I mean, Zeke just got $15 million. They're gonna have to pay Gordon minimum 12 for him to be happy, I would think. He obviously turned down 10 and a half offer from the Chargers already.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to pay the guy. You're gonna have to give up assets for him. You're not gonna be giving him much of a break once he gets in there and gets up to speed. More news: DK Metcalf listed as a starter. He was at practice today. Everybody I know was worried about that injury and surgery. But Bridger, I know you are a big DK fan, and it sounds like Pete Carroll is a huge DK Metcalf fan. How are you feeling today compared to where we were a week ago?
Dynasty-wise, about the same. I'm excited because we should be able to get to watch him play a little sooner than I expected. I thought he might miss a few weeks, but it was just a scope. The recovery for that is typically pretty quick. I'm glad that it sounds like there haven't been any setbacks from that, because that is one concern with him. He did have an injury history in college, so any setbacks on any minor surgery like that would be a pretty big red flag. So I'm glad that, as far as we know right now, all systems are go for him.
Brad, what are your thoughts? Were you a DK fan, and how did you take this news?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's hard not to be a DK fan. You know, he's got the size, the speed. You know, he appears to be kind of the total package as a wide receiver. I don't necessarily, I wasn't terribly excited about him in Seattle, but I think it bodes well. You know, but with any other rookie receiver, I mean, it's a wait and see. You can't plug him into your lineup even if he is a starter. We got to see how he fits, how they use him. We got to see if that knee's good, you know, and holds up. So if you're somebody watching or listening and you're looking for some sort of starting, sitting advice, I would leave him on your bench for at least for a little while. We got to see how they use him, you know, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Probably at the minimum would be my guess. But I like it. I mean, I love them dynasty-wise. I definitely have them in a few spots where I could land them at, kind of mid to late, kind of mid to late 5 to 10 range first-round picks. I was taking them. So what do you think about them, Rick?
I like him a lot, and I haven't bought into the whole business of people being upset that he landed in Seattle. Like, he's got one of the best deep ball throwing quarterbacks, and there's not really anybody else to take targets. I mean, you've got Tyler Lockett, who's probably, he's going to lead the team in targets, but after you get past Lockett and DK, it's a cesspool of talent there. I don't really like anybody else that's on that team to eat up and take a bunch of targets.
Well, for me, it's I've not seen a great history with the bigger, stronger, faster receivers. I mean, I can't think of a guy basically other than Sidney Rice that's really had a lot of success in Seattle's offense. So it's not necessarily, it's what I've not seen Seattle do, and that's deploy big receivers that are tall and fast and all that. I mean, that's just my concern. And it's not a big concern. Like I said, I'm a big DK fan. It's just a concern that I had, with I completely agree that there really isn't anybody that's going to take targets from him other than Tyler and a running back. I mean, other than that, they've got nothing at tight end, and there's not a lot of depth on their receiver core.
All right. Is there any other news that we want to chat about here real quick before we get into talking some Thursday night football? And we're not talking this preseason junk where nobody starts and nobody plays. We're talking real NFL football, regular season. We got DFS starting, redraft starting, all kinds of fun stuff. But any other news that we want to talk about real quick before we get into it?
I don't think anything that's terribly pertinent to this week's action, that's for sure.
Nope. All right. Thursday night football. Bears versus Packers. Opening night. I was supposed to be there, and I'm not going to be there because the tickets are no good that my buddy got. And I'm very, very disappointed. I'm glad I didn't pay my $200 for my ticket and then get screwed at the gate. But I'm still excited because we get to watch real football for one. But as those of you that have been around for a little while, I am a Chicago Bears fan. And I hate the Packers. So it's like the best way to open up a season, a Thursday night. And first off, Bridger, why don't you tell me which player you're most excited to watch tomorrow night?
That's tough. Dynasty-wise, there's not a lot of players in this game that I'm excited about. I guess the one I'd be most excited about would be Aaron Jones. And even him, it's kind of mild excitement. I know this is as excited as I was for week 1 of the NFL season, but it's different. As far as this specific game goes, Aaron Jones is one of the only players I'd be really comfortable plugging in. I want to wait and see on the Bears running, and same with the Bears receivers. Week 1, Thursday night game. Obviously, players have the ability to be a little bit rusty. It's probably going to be a bit of a bloodbath. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a low-scoring game. And I just don't know what to think of the Bears team yet. So I guess as far as getting information out of the game, I'm excited to watch all of the Bears to see who I really like and who I think are going to have big years.
I can tell you.
Can you?
Before the game happens.
Can you?
We'll let Brad go first, though. Who are you looking for? I mean, and I like how you didn't even mention Devontae Adams. I mean, he's a top 10 Dynasty asset.
Devontae Adams is obvious. He's a plug and play. If you have him on your team, you're going to be playing him.
Yeah, for me, it's tough because I hate both these teams equally as a Lions fan. I hope they both lose. I just know that's impossible. Oh, we could tie. That'd be sweet. When it comes to players,
Somebody likes kissing their cousin.
Well, I'm never going to win anything, so I got to take as many ribs as I can. So, a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about that I want to see. He's now 2 years removed from an injury. Is Allen Robinson? He was a guy that I was always really big on, and obviously it never really truly came to fruition with Jacksonville. And then he came to Chicago, and I thought, well, maybe something could happen here. And all offseason, I've heard, Rick, I've heard you mention quite a few times that you think Allen Robinson points to do well in this offense. And I want to see it. He's now a couple years removed from an injury. Like, he should be good to go. And, like, I want to see that happen because I want to feel vindicated. Like, I always thought he could be good. And, he's always been not bad, but never great. So he's kind of the guy I'm most interested in, at least from the offensive perspective.
There's a couple things that I'm interested in seeing, and it's not just on Chicago's side. We've had this big Allison MVS debate. ESP was in there before his injury. So we've had that debate going the whole offseason, going all the way back to when people thought that Green Bay might either draft another receiver somewhat high or even back to free agency where they potentially could have added to that wide receiver core after we heard, Aaron Rodgers was not happy with having 3 rookie wide receivers last season. And then Randall Cobb moved on, and it kind of opened this whole thing up to who's it going to be and who's going to step up. So that's one scenario. And then Goyle actually mentioned the other scenario that I'm really, really interested in. I'm fairly confident that the passing game is going to go through Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. Miller is coming off of an injury, so it might take a game or two for him to get moved in. But how is that backfield going to play out with Tariq Cohen, who's still going to be heavily utilized in the passing game? But how many touches is Mike Davis going to get? I think we're going to get 15 to 17 touches out of Montgomery, and I think he's going to have the bulk of that. It's just how much is that third guy going to work in on a week out base? Because if he's not getting in there very much, then Tariq Cohen and Montgomery can be very valuable fantasy assets. If Mike Davis and even Cordarrelle Patterson are utilized out of the backfield, it hurts the upside of either guy. So I'm very interested in that. But I can tell you, Allen Robinson's going to eat this year. And he had some injuries, was still coming back. And then we're talking not only coming back another year removed from that injury, but the second year for all these guys in a new offense is big. And they've been talking all preseason about, excuse me, how they are progressing in this offense and adding so much more stuff now that they know where to be and how to do everything in this offense. I'm so excited because I think they're going to take another step forward, and I'm very excited for Allen Robinson. I don't have enough Allen Robinson shares, though. I swear, it's like people know when I'm live, and they don't talk to me at all any other time until I'm live, and then they're hitting me up. Um, so yeah, I mean that's my thing with the offense. I've been following this offense really close. They are really excited about Montgomery, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting 20 plus touches out of the backfield. They're going to run pass plays for him, and he's going to be the banger. It's just how much is Mike Davis going to be involved? Are they going to try to keep everybody fresh? And that's the big question mark. And Goyle says Mike Davis could ruin this backfield fantasy-wise. He's not going to ruin it because I think that you've got 2 RB2s at minimum because Cohen's going to be involved in the passing game. Montgomery's going to be, but you could have higher running back 2 upside from Montgomery if Davis was non-existent. Like trade him to Tampa Bay or something. Get him out of here. We don't need that. We don't need that question mark. Um, so, if you had to guess, Bridger, who is the fantasy leader in this game tomorrow night?
Excluding quarterbacks, Devontae Adams.
Brad.
Man, that's a tough one. I say Adams, just because I expect Aaron Rodgers to air it out insane amount of times.
Well, I'm gonna go with my boy Allen Robinson just to be on the opposite side, so we're not all saying the same thing. Devontae Adams probably is the favorite to do that, though. I know that Bridger said that Adams is probably the only guy that he's starting. Are there any other guys that you would start, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, normally the first week of the season, I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff will happen, but there are some clear starters on both sides. You know, Aaron Jones is the guy that you should be comfortable starting this week. He gets passes out of the backfield, he gets the rushes. I'm comfortable starting him because I think Aaron Jones, Rodgers likes him. He knows how to utilize him. He moves him around. He gets in the ball in space. You know, he should at least put up RB2 numbers this week. And that's not amazing, but that's starting. From Chicago side, upset starting, you know, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, and Tariq Cohen. Montgomery, I know everybody's super excited. He's like, I like to wait and see a little bit, you know, just to see kind of how it really pans out. I know what I'm getting with Tariq Cohen because they used him really well last year. So those are kind of the guys that I would want to start on both sides. What say you guys?
I'm fading Aaron Jones everywhere I have him because he has not fared well against Chicago. Chicago obviously had the best run defense last year, but in all the games he's played against Chicago, he has not done well. If I have another option, I'm plugging them in. I won't play running backs versus Chicago very often anyway. I mean, they're pretty good against the run. Number two wide receivers killed the Bears last year. I don't know if you guys remember a Miami game where Albert Wilson went completely bonkers out of seemingly nowhere, but wide receiver twos have been um, very good against the Chicago Bears. I don't know if that's going to change because we've added Clinton Dix and Buster Screen and um, or Scrine or whatever. The IDP guys are probably pissed off because I probably said his name wrong. But I don't know if that's going to change anything because the corners are the same. So that's something to look for in that Allison MVS showdown for wide receiver two. Um, but yeah, I mean I have a feeling this is going to be a higher scoring game than people anticipate. Um, both teams are going to come out gunning. Aaron Rodgers is trying to he's gonna come out angry after the offseason and all the shit that was talked about him and how he ruined the team and this and that. So as a Bears fan, the one thing I know is that you can literally like almost kill the guy in one half and he'll take a bunch of drugs and come out and beat you in the second half.
Yeah, well, and wasn't last year's game week 1 Thursday night? Wasn't it a pretty high scoring affair?
I don't remember the exact score. I know the Bears had a lead and Rodgers took cocaine or something and couldn't feel anything and came back in. Like I've never seen anybody so high as his press conference after the game or when they were interviewing him on the field. Like that dude was hopped up on some real good
Yeah,
painkillers for
he
sure.
developed an accent and everything. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was different than anything I've ever seen. Um, I'm trying to think. Oh, the other interesting bit, and anybody that knows this, we had that little double doink action last year. So we've got this new kicker, and after an off season of literally after every practice, the questions were about kickers. It wasn't about your quarterback or your young receiver or anything like that. It was about the kicker competition after getting knocked out of the playoffs because you can't hit a field goal. So Panero is going to be another thing that I'm going to be paying attention to tomorrow night. It's in Chicago. We know it's a windy city, so if he starts off hot, hits a couple field goals, and doesn't miss anything, then I'll feel a little bit better about the rest of the season at kicker. If not, let's just sign Carly Lloyd and
Get
have
it
a day.
over with.
Any last notes on this game or any other games that you're really looking forward to this weekend? Bridger?
I mean, I'm looking forward to Sunday Night Football, Steelers versus Patriots. That's a big game. Week 1, favorite team. So, I mean, I'm super excited for that one. I'm also excited about it for fantasy purposes, too, though. I think we'll learn a lot about both the Steelers and the Patriots, what the Steelers are doing at receiver, maybe what the Patriots are doing at running back. That game will probably be a pretty high-scoring game, so we might not get a lot of answers out of the Patriots backfield. I'm expecting a heavy James White game, but that's certainly the game I'm looking most forward to.
I mean, it grosses me to say this, but go Patriots. Just so we have a little feud here. We don't really get a lot of like Bears Packers action. So, Brad, obviously you're a Lions fan. Are you excited for them at all?
I'm a Tigers fan too, but I can't be excited about them either. Um, yeah, I mean, I want to. The problem right now, we're in a trap game. We're going against an Arizona offense that nobody really knows what to expect. Kingsbury's bringing that air raid offense. I really feel like they should go in and just destroy Arizona because Detroit's defense is a lot better, and it got better last season, and it continues to get better. But I could easily see us going in there and just getting man like we did against New York because we don't know how to handle an air raid offense and things just look different. So I'm a little nervous about that game. Like I want Detroit to win. But there's just some signs in Detroit that are making me concerned. Detroit's never carried 3 quarterbacks into the season, but yet the focus has been having 3 quarterbacks and adding guys to the practice squad. Like I'm wondering if Stafford's fully healthy. They kept him safe throughout the preseason, but there's concerns there. Can this defense take the next step? Gerard Davis is hurt, which is our Mike linebacker. We've got guys on the offensive line hurt. There's some things that are making me go, I don't want to watch this game because it'll piss me off if they just get destroyed in Arizona by what should be just a trash team. The games I'm actually excited about are I want to watch the Redskins-Eagles game. Like I want to see Darius Geis if because the hype that they keep running through him, like they're going to run the offense through him. Like I want to see if that actually pans out, if this kid can handle it. But on the other side, I want to see Carson Wentz. I get the feeling that if he's really healthy, like he could have an MVP type season, but like he can't stay healthy. So that's a game that's really intriguing. It's a division game, week 1. And then in the afternoon, I want to see the Colts and Chargers. I want to see can Jacoby Brissett shut the haters up about this Andrew Luck retirement, him being garbage, all that. So there's quite a few games in week 1 that are really intriguing. Not just teams that I like, but teams that fantasy wise have some interesting questions that need to be answered. What about you, Rick? Other than tomorrow night, what gets you excited?
I'm ready for some offense, and there are 2 games in particular. Um, One of them kind of depends on Cam Newton and how healthy he is, but right now there's a high over under in that Rams Panthers game. So I'm excited for that one. I'm probably going to have a lot of DFS action in that game. And then Tampa Bay and San Fran. Like we haven't really seen Jimmy G in a while, so we get to see him. Shanahan has his 2 running backs that I think are going to both fare really well. I believe back on the 49ers episode, I said grab Breda while you can. He was named the starter. He's going to be Freeman. Coleman's going to be Coleman. And that offense should be fun to watch. Pettis, got Goodwin, and Debo in the wide receiver group there. Can they take a step forward and help take some pressure off of Kittle? And then how does Kittle go? A year after just completely annihilating the NFL. So that game's real intriguing. We have Jameis on the other side. We already talked about him when we talked about the Bucks a little bit, and Godwin is the guy to watch in that game. There's been a lot of talk about him seeing a shit ton of targets. So it's time to actually see what really happens for these guys. So there's a lot of storylines around the NFL. Marcus Mariota, another guy that seems to be on his last chance. Listening to Gruden talk about Kaiser makes you kind of wonder, like, if Carr's not playing well, how long's the leash going to be there? Um, and then some of these other, other teams that we just don't know, like, how much is Evan Ingram going to be used for the Giants? Like, they're saying they have a huge role carved out for him. Like, are we going to see, is he going to be last year's Kittle this year? Um, just there's a ton of stuff, man. I'm so excited that it's here. Any last notes there, Bridger? You kind of just stuck to one game, and is there
Well,
anything else that sticks out for you?
the game I'm most excited about. Like I said, I'm really excited about the Bucks too. I own a lot of that offense. I'm a huge O.J. Howard, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans fan. So they're three of my highest owned players. So I'll be interested to see how that game goes. I'm really excited to see what Austin Eckler does for the Chargers. I forget who their matchup is.
They got the Colts.
They're playing the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
So he could get quite a few carries in that game if they get up early on the Colts. I'm also excited to see Jacoby Brissett. I'm a Brissett fan as well. I think he's a lot better than a lot of people are expecting. So I'd say the next games that I'm looking forward to are the Bucks, Niners, and the Chargers for sure. Also excited to see Duke Johnson in Houston.
Yes, I was going to say that, and Justin Jackson, because I know a lot of people are looking forward to Eckler. I was picking Jackson up in the 10th, 11th, 12th round in best ball leagues. I want to see how he does, because if I can get some value out of him, like, I got him everywhere in my 5 best ball leagues that I started up. If he has any value, then that helps me out a ton, adding length to those lineups. Brad, any last notes on this before we get into our guys to buy and sell here before their value goes one way or the other?
No, I mean, we've talked about most of the games. I think there's some pretty weak matchups. Like Seattle's got Cincy. I mean, that'll be a game that really should be pretty lopsided, because Cincy looks like they're going to be pretty rough all year. The Chiefs Jaguars game should be really interesting from the defensive standpoint. And then the Bills Jets game, I think, will be interesting to see how these young quarterbacks develop. But it looks to be a pretty solid slate of games for Week 1. I mean, there have been years where Week 1 really wasn't as exciting, but I think this year we've got some really good matchups to start the season. So it'll be a fun week.
Okay, here's a question for you guys. Jeremy Goldie in the chat says that the Packers put up 35 plus against the Bears defense. Are we going over or under 35 points for the Packers tomorrow? Bridger, why don't you go first?
I think that's a pretty easy under to take. Depending on what the odds were, I could see betting the over on that. But just one for one, I will definitely take the under.
Brad?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, when folks were asking me what I thought the score would be, I was kind of thinking like a 28-24 type game, somewhere in there. So I would definitely go under on that. What about you, Rick?
Oh, I'm definitely going under. I'm a Bears fan. The monsters of the Midway are back, baby. It's under. It's under for sure. But I do agree. It's going to be a close game one way or the other. Probably in that 24, 21, 28, 24, like you said. Somewhere in that range is probably where the game's going to be. These teams don't often blow each other out unless one of them's just really bad, which is normally the Bears when one of them's bad.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Dare I ask to discuss what to do with Zeke?
Plug him in and be happy.
Okay, I don't think it's that easy, and that's why he's bringing this up, because he put the post out. So we'll talk about this a little bit before we get into the buys and sells. the numbers that are coming out are he's going to get 20 to 25 snaps. Okay? I don't think it's a put him in your lineup, done deal at that. He played 965 snaps last year. He had 381 touches, which was like 39% of the snaps he played, he touched the ball. And if he just stays in the same range, that means he's going to get 8 to 10 touches on Sunday, and he averaged 0.83 points per fantasy points per touch, puts him in the 6.6 to 8.3 point range. Obviously, a touchdown changes everything if he gets in the end zone. But I just don't think that if you have another option that is going to get either targets, if you're talking a flex and a wide receiver, somebody that if you start 2 wide receivers and Keenan Allen's your wide receiver 3, I could see starting him this week if the news doesn't change on Zeke and the amount of reps he's going to get in this game. But at 25 reps and only, 8, 10, 11 touches, you're not guaranteed fantasy points. I don't think that it is a no-brainer, plug him in and go. Bridger, I know a lot of people, they don't agree with me because they think you just plug a guy in because of his name. But when I'm looking at this, I don't agree. What do you think, Bridger?
I agree with you if you have a high-caliber guy that you can put in instead of him.
It does always matter. I do want to say that real quick before you go on.
Yeah.
It does matter what your other options are. Like, I'm not saying, throw, somebody's third running back in there. But if you have another quality option, then it's not a given that he has to be in your lineup. So sorry about that.
Yeah, so on that thread in the Facebook group, I saw somebody talking about Royce Freeman as an option. I would certainly be starting Zeke over a guy like Royce Freeman. Most of my leagues, you're starting 10 to 12 players, so you just don't have somebody that really could be better than Zeke, so I'm starting Zeke. But like you said, if you're in a small starting lineup kind of league, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex, I could see starting one of those third receivers over him. But for the most part, I'm plugging in Zeke just because the ceiling is still there. He certainly has a low floor, but your bench options probably have a lower floor and a much lower ceiling.
So, Brad, you think you just plug Zeke in and roll him out there and let him go?
Well, I think you have. Most of the time when you got Zeke, like he's your stud running back. You probably don't have a great 3 or 4. Now, obviously, situation dictates that. Like, if you have a decent RB3 that you could plug in for this week until he gets his football feet back under him, I mean, I would probably be okay with that. But there's places where I've got him, and not very many, but the places that I do have him, I'm starting because I just don't have a better option behind him. Like, I have a nice RB1 and RB2, and then my RB3 is not great. Very Royce Freeman-esque type players. So I'm starting him just because he probably will only get, maybe 8 to 12 carries, but he has the ability to turn any of those into a touchdown at any time. So, I'll take that chance week 1 because, well, it is what it is. What do you think, Rick?
Oh, I'm just, a lot of my running back 4s, and I'm kind of fortunate the way the offseason has went with Duke Johnson getting moved. He's a running back 4 or 5 on a lot of my teams. Like, I would start him over Zeke if it came down to that this week, if the news doesn't change. Like, if it comes out that they're going to give him more than 20 to 25 snaps, then it changes for me. And with the news coming out about Kenyon Drake and Miami going to give him a bunch, that one's not as easy because it's Baltimore, but I expect him to catch the ball a lot too. The thing that we also have to remember is that last year in the first half, Zeke didn't catch a lot of balls. So I'm wondering what Zeke we get this year. Do we get the Zeke that was targeted like 7, 8 times, or the Zeke that was targeted 3, 4 times a game? So, my only thing is that it's not cut and dry. It's not like you have to Like if you have options, I know for one, Goyle in my league, we're in at least two big leagues together, and he's always been a guy that had a lot of running backs. So he's a guy that would have options in that. And I know a lot of guys that do stockpile running backs will have other options that I could make an argument for over him if he's only getting 20 to 25 snaps. So yeah, Goyle, I love that you brought that up because it's an interesting debate. I just think sometimes you gotta really dig in and see what history tells us. And he's not really an efficient back. He makes his money off of the amount of touches. I mean, he's good. He's not inefficient, but he's not as efficient as some other backs that can, hit that ceiling without the touches. But okay, why don't we go through this pretty quick? Some guys that we can buy here before the season starts that you might be high on that the public just hasn't caught up to. Brad, why don't you start us off with a guy that you just think is still undervalued?
Man, yeah. Probably for me, my top guy that I'm still targeting that people are selling relatively cheap is Evan Ingram. I got him in the last few weeks for basically what'll become like kind of a mid to late second round pick. And I just think that there's not a lot of great options in New York. He's very attainable, and he's going to get a lot of touches. He's a very good tight end one. So it's kind of a guy that I love, but I've always liked him. What's your mouth
How
open
are
for?
you getting? Okay, you
Oh yeah,
robbed
no,
somebody.
absolutely. It was
You put a gun to their head and said, "Send me Evan
no,
Ingram,
I didn't
or
quite
I'm
do
going
that.
to blast you."
No, not at all. I mean, I just I say the guy a little bit. When I send a trade offer, I tend to try to talk it up, but
He made up a fake injury report. He posted it on RotoHeat.com and sent the guy to it like, "Look, he's hurt.
well,
He's
no,
out for the year."
I just the way that I explained it was, listen, there's not a lot of targets or not a lot of really good receiving options in New York, so teams are probably going to double team, either Sterling Shepard or Evan Ingram. Golden Tate suspended for a few weeks. Just I tried to smooth it a little bit. Because there aren't. I mean, Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram are really the two quality receivers they've got, other than Barkley. Obviously, you can't count him the same way. So that's kind of where I went with it. I was like, hey, your team's kind of meh, you're not really great. You're not a contender, and that's really the only thing I needed was a tight end. So
A second rounder.
basically a second
And
round pick.
that's crazy because if they would have just taken a minute and looked at Evan Ingram's numbers without Odell, which is basically what this offense is, his numbers are
Same.
just stupid
Yeah.
without Odell. So, good sales pitch, I guess, man. That's awesome.
I've
That's a
also
steal.
been told to get bent too. I mean, like I've had places where I've offered, so it's you just gotta. That's a tough thing. Is I love sending out offers just to start getting the conversation going. And sometimes people tell me I'm crazy because they're not always great offers. I mean, a second for Ingram's not a great offer, but
I would have told you to get bet if
well,
you sent me a
sure.
second for Evan Ingram.
But I like to negotiate. I want to get the conversation going so we can kind of see where people are at, because I've realized that trading with everybody in all these different leagues that I'm in, it's like everybody changes so frequently as to what they want for a player that it's like, come back to the well and see what happens. I mean, Evan Ingram hasn't been hyped up a ton, so the guy just kind of was like, well, I've got, he had some other tight end that he liked just as much. So he's like, well, I've already got this guy, and I'll probably start him more, so as a starter, he's like, well, I kind of like this guy more. I'm like, okay, well, you'll lose, so that's great.
I like how he backtracked there on the guy said that he liked somebody else more, but no, that's
He
great,
tried
dude.
to
I mean,
make he
that's an
tried to
awesome
make
deal for you.
excuses for it when everybody started bashing him in all the chats. So I was like, ugh.
I sold the guy, and then everybody in the league just like sent him hate mail.
Well, but
Um,
that happens everywhere. I mean, even in our RotoHeat Superflex, when I did the Melvin Gordon trade, people thought I was crazy. I was like, well, no. I don't remember exactly what the deal was, but I got multiple pieces back in the deal for like Tariq Cohen, basically. And it's like, well, no, whatever the deal was, I liked it enough that I was going to do it. So But
Okay, let's Bridger. That was a long time on our first sell.
All right, so mine as a buy would be another tight end, OJ Howard. I think he finishes this season as either the number 3 or number 2 tight end. The other guys I have Kelsey basically definitively ahead of him, and then I have OJ Howard right there with Kittle for this year. I think he's going to have a huge week 1 against San Fran. Like I said, I think that game's going to be a shootout. They're both pretty poor defenses, and O.J. Howard has been extremely efficient in his short career, and he was great last year up until he got hurt. So O.J. Howard's definitely my last-minute buy if you can. I would definitely be open to adding a little something to a guy like an Evan Ingram or a Hunter Henry to try to grab him. So that's where I'm at on O.J. Howard. He's definitely my buy.
I mean, I can't add to Evan Ingram for him, but that's why we have our guys, right? So mine, first off, I'm going like way cheaper than the guys you threw out there, and I'm saying Albert Wilson. Like, it's not going to cost you a lot to get him, and I just feel like the Stills trade may have the owner kind of second guessing whether they want to move him or not. But it's still not going to be that expensive to acquire him. He was a top 20 wide receiver before his injury last year. And without Stills there, like I think he's the number one. And unless you really think that Devontae Parker is going to turn the corner this year, I don't even think there's very much argument with it. And this team's going to have to pass a lot. So he was getting 6 to 8 targets before his injury last year, and I just think for the price that he's at, it's just way, way too cheap. Brad, you got another guy? Or do you guys hate me for saying Albert Wilson?
No, I like that
no,
pick a lot.
yeah, I mean you've been banging the drum for Albert Wilson for a little while now. I mean, that's kind of your guy. I mean, it's hard to get a better kind of buy low type guy than that. I mean, I think a guy like Cortland Sutton's very under the radar right now. I think he could be a nice candidate, but you're not really going to buy him low. Like people just aren't talking a lot about him. So trying to come up with a buy low type guy. I mean, Albert Wilson's probably the best one that we're going to come up with that's super cheap that you're going to get a bigger return on your investment in, at least in my opinion.
Oh, I think that buying Cortland Sutton right now is a good time to buy him.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you on that one. Bridger.
So the next one is tough. It's between a couple guys. I'll just pick one because one of you might have the other one. But Miles Sanders would be my last second buy. I think he's going to come in and really flash early on in the season. He was my running back 1 this draft. He was my number 2 overall prospect this draft. As far as rookie drafts go after the actual NFL draft, I really like the landing spot. I know people are concerned with potential committee. Obviously, the Melvin Gordon trade talks are concerning, but it doesn't sound like that's going to go anywhere. That they would have to have a pretty drastic change in demands for that trade to get anywhere. But I think Miles Sanders could potentially have a big week 1, and if he doesn't, I think he'll definitely flash, and people are going to start getting more on that train than they already are.
Yeah, I do not argue with Miles Sanders at all. I I do think that Jordan Howard's going to be more involved. I know that they just tried to trade him, but they were trying to get a guy that has handled the rock a lot over the last couple years and can do both run and catch. So that would be my only worry early, but I still think that uh, you're not going to see Sanders' value drop even if he's not the bell cow there. I think his value's where people expected him to be in a RBBC. So there's like if you drafted him, you can't be like like super surprised if it is a committee there for a little while. Um, I gotta go back to Devin Funchess, and I know people are gonna call me crazy, but we've already talked here that I think all three of us expect Brissett to be better than what the public perception was, right after Andrew Luck's retirement. I think a lot of the public are imagining a 2017 scenario, and I think we've all said that we expect him to be better than that. And if that's the case, then even if Funchess doesn't have the ceiling that I thought he had with Luck, he's still super cheap right now. And even at a wide receiver 3, he's getting you a value at the price that he's at. And that's why I would still try to acquire him now, because I think people are lower on him right now at this minute with Andrew Luck retiring than they will be the rest of the season. Any thoughts on him?
I agree that if you're going to buy him, now is the time. I just don't really have any thoughts on him. I don't think he's going to do much for your team. I think he's an extremely risky start if you ever get to that point. Brissett's a guy that would be on my buy. He's got a ton of weapons. He's got a great offense, and I don't think it's going to be nearly the drop-off that a lot of people do from Luck. But I definitely don't think the ball's going to be spread around enough or enough touchdown opportunities for Funchess to really ever give you much value.
All right, I'm setting the over. I think Funchess is going to have 10 touchdowns this year.
No, I would take the under. I'd put the over under at like 6.5.
He had 8 with Cam Newton, who I don't think throws the ball as well as Brissett, in the last 9 games of the season 2 years ago. He's definitely got touchdown upside if that offense moves. He's a red zone threat. Brad, you're taking the under too, I think.
Yeah, man. Well, so I got to talk it through. So with Ebron and Jack Doyle healthy, Funchess is, man, it's hard to see him being the guy that would get those red zone on a regular basis, get those red zone targets. I would guess he's probably somewhere. Yeah, I'd have to go under. I'm guessing probably 8 would be kind of a ceiling for him, but maybe he's a better red zone threat than Doyle or Ebron. And
I think he's better than Ebron. Ebron, I think, was just Luck's little toy last year.
Well, and I think the interesting thing is if you've been watching Colts preseason stuff, which preseason isn't always indicative, they've ran the most 11 personnel of anybody in the league. Like 80% of the time, they're in 3 wide receiver sets. So that bodes well for a guy like Funchess getting that kind of action. But I just don't know. Like last year, they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. So it's like, are they trying to practice that they're going to go more 3 wide this year? Or it's hard to really tell what their plan is. But yeah, I would guess 8. Well, if he becomes a red zone target, 10 to 12 is not out of the ordinary.
They were starting Dontrell Inman and Zach Pascal in games last year, so that could be a reason why they didn't run very many 3 wide receiver sets. Yeah, so he would be my third guy. Who are you trying to sell here before this season starts, before their value starts to drop? Brad, why don't you start us off on this one?
It's probably, we talked a little bit about this, and I really tried to rack my brain about a guy that you would sell. At this point, I would probably try to sell either one of the two. So either Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp, because if everybody's healthy, it's hard to see how that target share really was going to be. And I don't know if that offense can support 3 wide receivers for a long period of time. So those would be kind of one of those 2 guys, kind of pick the one you like the most and then try to sell the other one. I don't mind Robert Woods. I don't mind Cooper Kupp. I'm not in love with either of them. So those would that was kind of a cop out, but one of those 2.
Bridger.
Mine would be Tevin Coleman. It's probably too late at this point now that Breida came out as the number 1 back on the depth chart. I don't really put any stock into that, but I just don't like Tevin Coleman. I don't like his talent. I don't think he's shown nearly as much as he should have for the opportunities that he's gotten. And now he's in a timeshare, and I think Matt Breida is probably the more talented back. And I don't really love Matt Breida this year either. I don't want that rushing game from the 49ers. Now that McKinnon's out of the picture, it certainly looks brighter, but hopefully I would be able to find somebody that really believes in Tevin Coleman with McKinnon out of the picture. And so he'd be my sell just because I think that whole offense is going to be pretty messy.
I'll buy Coleman. And I'll buy Cooper Kupp off of you. So hopefully, do you guys have them players in the Superflex League? Because we can work out some sort of deal if so. I think that the easiest one right now is LaShawn McCoy. Like, I am getting out of every share that I have right now. Even if he has success, and this could go and double up with Carlos Hyde, even if they get volume early, like these are still 30 plus, I guess Hyde's going to be in his 29-year-old season, but we're talking aged veterans. There's not very many opportunities to get value out of these guys before it's completely shot. So Carlos Hyde / LaShawn McCoy, I would be getting out of as soon as possible, especially since they could both fall flat once the season starts, because they were both really, really bad running backs last year. NFL running backs. People like to say Carlos Hyde was running back 16 before he got traded from Cleveland, but if you look at his stats, it was touches equal fantasy points. That is true. But if you're not a good running back in the NFL, you end up on 5 teams in 18 months, and that's Carlos Hyde. Brad, what's your next one? Nobody says anything. You guys make me feel like awkward.
Well,
I didn't know I had to point.
I agree.
The tough thing I'm approving new members to the Facebook group because people are so excited about the RotoHeat community. The tough thing for your sells is like, I guess there's kind of like this like tiny bit of hype about both. I find it hard to sell them though. Like, I don't own any shares of those guys, but I don't know how easy it's going to be. Like, unless you're taking a super low price for them. I guess. Yes, you want to sell them because who wants those really trashy running backs on your team anymore? But, it's just like,
There are people out there valuing Carlos Hyde as a second-round draft pick.
Those people like to pay me money and lose every year is what they do.
Oh, God. Well, don't talk shit about one of our own guys. But I'm just saying that there's definitely value out there to get for these two guys, and you got to get it now before it's gone. There are people hyped about LaShawn McCoy in Kansas City because it's Kansas City, and
2020 they're drafting a running back. Like, there's just not, I'm not a Damian Williams truther, and I'm not a LaShawn McCoy guy. I don't like anybody on their roster running back wise.
Okay, Brad, who you selling next?
I'd probably go with a guy like a Kenyon Drake type guy. Miami's just such a weird team. Like, I like Kenyon Drake a lot, the player. Like, Miami, I just don't trust as an organization. Like, I want him to go somewhere where he'll get proper utilization and be used to his ability. He would be a guy fantasy wise I'd probably be selling because I don't know what Miami's going to do with him, and it just feels like he's just going to have another wasted year with this just trash team.
Bridger.
I haven't really come up with a second one. I'm so optimistic looking forward for the NFL season. I only want to think about buys. One that comes to mind off the top of my head is Kenny Golladay. The target volume should be there, so he should produce well enough as a wide receiver 2 to 3 type, but I think it's going to be very, very up and down. I don't think he's a guy that I would have a lot of fun plugging into my lineup every week this year. And the hype on him has sort of cooled compared to where it was a while back, but I've always thought he was one of the more overrated dynasty assets. I know for a long time there, he was sort of in that Chris Godwin area where a lot of people were basically asking Chris Godwin or Kenny Golladay, and I just never valued him that high. And so, yeah, just because of the volatility I expect and pretty much just the lack of real offense from the Detroit Lions this year, I don't want Kenny Golladay.
Well, I don't disagree with him at all, but I was gonna say somebody else, and then you brought up somebody that I would love to sell if I had shares, and that is Godwin. I think this dude has just been straight blasted this offseason, and he has skyrocketed up the boards without even doing anything on the field. It's all been, coach speak and everything else that has him at this current value. He was nowhere near this current value when the season ended last year, and I think that there's safer plays out there.
I disagree with that.
I knew you would.
I love Godwin's talent. 2 years ago, he was my biggest buy of the offseason. And his hype has definitely climbed, but I've talked about it before. In the leagues that I own him, I haven't been able to get any offers that I would even consider selling for, really. I think about the best offer I've gotten is a single 2020 first for him, which I'm just not going to take that value hit on a guy who's being valued so highly this year. And I believe in the Buccaneers passing offense this year. I think there's going to be a ton of volume. And I think
What's your thought on Godwin? Break the tie.
I've never been a big Godwin guy, so Rick's probably going to get my vote on it. The tough thing for me is more so the way Arians deploys his wide receivers. Like, I see Mike Evans having a really solid year. And I see there being potential for OJ Howard just because of the talent. But man, this offense looks like it could be super anemic too. So he would probably be a guy that I don't know if I'd hold long term. But I don't own him anywhere. Like, I've never been a big Godwin guy.
All right. Well, Bridger lost that one. I think I lost like five of the 6 guys that we did. So it's cool. I just had to break that streak. So we have a couple questions. Well, that one I don't understand because.
Well, then obviously it's not the Raiders.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't think the Raiders are going to be good at all, and I think the Browns will be pretty good. So I would pick the Browns.
That's the same thing I would say. Start sit. Mitch Trubisky, Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan.
Are you starting him or sitting him?
Oh, start. I'm sorry. Start Matt Ryan, sit Trubisky.
Matt Ryan, yeah.
Matt Ryan plays at Vikings, right?
Yeah.
Matt Ryan.
I might sit Matt Ryan.
Last year the Vikings stymied him. He really didn't produce very well. I think when I was doing Atlanta's write-up on the website, I think he had only gotten like 9 or 10 fantasy points. I mean, it was a super low number of points, but there was injuries and all sorts of stuff. So Matt Ryan's solid. I mean, Trubisky against Green Bay, I'm not sure how I feel.
Trubisky's got that rushing floor that I like. And I'm not really scared of Green Bay's defense. Would you do this trade in the one with Hopkins? I have Damian Williams, Sony Michel, and Miles Sanders as my running backs. And my flex, I have Mike Evans and Hopkins. Evans, Michel, Sanders, Brown, McCaffrey. Got what? I'm not sure what you're asking, but
He clarified. So the trade is Mike Evans, Sony Michel, DeAndre Hopkins, and Miles Sanders for AB, CMC, and Chris Godwin. And I don't think that's even close. It's the Hopkins side by a lot.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't touch that.
I'm keeping Hopkins side on that also. So we definitely agree there. Over here, Nick Goyle says Adam Thielen, his value has gotten way too low. He is not that old. I disagree. I would be selling Adam Thielen, especially after the second half he had last year. I see that being more of the real Thielen. Any thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah, at some point, yeah, I would agree with you. I'm not a big Thielen guy. Like, I like Diggs long term.
Bridger?
I've never owned Thielen. I'm not even sure what his ADP is like right now, so I can't say for sure what he would cost you.
I'm on there right now looking. Let's see here.
Price that he's going to cost, because I think that the 49ers offense is going to be better than Bridger thinks it is.
Adam Thielen's Overall ranked 29. He's wide receiver 12.
Yeah, I'd be selling.
Yeah, I'm selling at that price. Goodwin, I'm buying at his price. Bridger.
Yeah, I would buy. I don't think it's exciting, but he's a decent bye week kind of fill in. He could get you a really big week. He could also get you a 0, but he's basically free.
Well, that is the wide receiver position outside of a few guys. The Julios and, well, I would normally say AB here, but I don't know what kind of crazy shit's going to happen this year with him. And I used to be very confident, um, but I mean, there's just, you know what, man? Out of Hopkins, Thomas, uh, Julio, and Adams and Evans, like, how many other guys are you confident on a week to week basis? Keenan Allen, maybe, are like not gonna get like shut out.
I mean, I don't think you can ever really be confident outside of
Well,
them. That's not getting
you know
shut
what
out.
I'm saying. You don't have to take it like so.
There's a
literal,
lot of other
Bridger.
guys. There's a lot of other guys that they're basically an automatic start for me.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very comfortable with Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks types. But as far as just week to week, I mean, Adams, if you take his worst game from last year and average that out over the season, he's still a wide receiver 1. So he's as consistent as you can get. And those other guys that you listed, and I would say AB if he's going to be on the field, but the dude is.
Right, that's my thing.
Who knows what he is? I don't know.
Tish Nepal asks, would you rather start DJ Moore or Josh Gordon as your flex 2? Brad.
Josh Gordon. Mostly because their lack of a tight end. I mean, you can see Josh Gordon getting some decent amount of targets this week. DJ Moore. I mean, I'm kind of firmly on the Curtis Samuel bandwagon. I expect Curtis Samuel to take another step this year. So, and plus, who knows? If Cam's really completely healed from his injury. I mean, he was still pretty hobbled. So I would go with Josh Gordon at least this week.
That one's really close for me, but I would go DJ Moore. He's been practicing longer. He should be a little bit more ready to go. I think both of those could be really high-scoring games, so I think both of them are really pretty good start options. But I would give the edge to DJ Moore.
Yeah, if that's what you're coming down to at the end of your roster when you're putting your lineup together, you're in a pretty good spot. So, I literally am not going to break this tie. What I'm going to tell you to do is get a quarter and flip it, and if it's heads, you're playing DJ Moore, and if it's tails, it's Josh Gordon. Because just like Bridger said, I think it's very, very close, and I'll be playing a lot of DJ Moore in DFS this week. Goyle says, Brad, you
But you
loved
love my
my
Thielen
take, but then you disagreed with me.
Yeah, when I look at our ranking on him, he can't really get any higher. So it's like people are going to still ask a pretty premium price for him. So it'd be hard. I like the take, but it'd be hard.
Thanks for stopping by, Goyle. We are going to call it a night. For those of you over on YouTube, the YouTube start-sit questions are going to be posted in the morning. Maybe I'll post them tonight. Who knows? Probably in the morning, though. Brad put that video together for us, but just so everybody knows, and hopefully Brad told you, the whole team put their input in, so it's not just Brad giving you the wrong answers. It's all of us giving you the wrong answers. But it's opening day, fellas. We are 55 minutes away from it officially being opening day in the NFL. Well, I guess us over here in Indiana. Bridger might have a little more time before he gets there than we do. But thanks everybody for stopping by. It was a fun stream tonight, even though all the stuff I worked hard on didn't really pan out. But Brad, why don't you give us that sales pitch to shoot us out of here?
All right, guys. So thanks again for hanging out. Don't forget to keep track of us on all your major social media platforms. You saw on the screen how to catch us on Facebook. That's RotoHeat Fantasy. Over on Twitter, on Instagram, on twitch.tv / RotoHeat. Don't forget, this is a podcast, so if you don't want to see our faces and just want to hear our smooth, sultry voices, you can find us on any of your podcasting platforms. We're on iTunes, on Google Play Podcasts, on Podbean, on Spotify. We're all over the place. We're worldwide. Don't forget to continue to like and subscribe to our YouTube page so you can keep up to date on all the great content. We're working hard to give you the best content that free can get you on YouTube. Don't forget to also check out Sully's 2 Cents. That's a podcast that is in the RotoHeat network, and we've got a lot of great stuff coming from our authors. Weekly, we're going to do divisional breakdowns, so check out rotoheat.com to be up to date on all the news and notes from around the league and our analysis on it. Thank you guys again for sticking with us, and have a good night.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Later, guys.